Morning, gang. Sorry this video's up so late today. I had another video I had already recorded and I was going to post today about the true reasons behind the stimulus, but late last night it was announced that Trump was not going to sign it, so some of my conclusions may not be pertinent, and hence I shelved the video. I had a nice conversation with Angry Prepper last night after my live stream, his live stream, and we were discussing different things. And while speaking with him, the topic of teamwork and ego came up, and it gave me the idea for another video to discuss something we should all be very aware of, but sometimes we become a little complacent about it. I wanted to share this with you by telling you a couple of short historical stories and then explain how they apply to us as preppers. Okay, so first story. In 1816, following the Bourbon Restoration, the French frigate Medusa, loaded with gold and silver, food and wine, and sufficiently armed, was commissioned to ferry French officials and passengers to the port of St. Louis in Senegal. Okay. Through inept navigation by her captain, an incompetent émigré naval officer who hadn't commanded a ship in 20 years, and was given command of this for political reasons, Medusa struck the Bank of Arguin off the coast of present-day Mauritania and became a total loss. Okay. After the wreck, suddenly the wind began to intensify and the ship began to crack. Under the threat of the collapse of the ship, the passengers and the crew panicked. The captain decided to immediately leave the ship. Most of the 400 on board evacuated, with about 150 men forced to take refuge on an improvised raft that was 20 meters long and 7 meters wide. Medusa's first officer was to be in charge of the raft. After all the men boarded the raft, it was then to be towed by the frigate's launches. The overloaded raft had little provisions and no controls or navigation. In the pre-storm weather conditions, the boat crew, the ones towing the raft, soon realized that it was almost impossible to tow this heavy raft and began to fear that the passengers on the raft would begin to move to the boats in panic. The people on the boats cut the towing ropes, leaving the raft adrift at sea, and they headed for shore. All those that were on the boats, including the captain and the governor, made it to the coast safely. On the raft, however, the situation immediately turned into disaster. The survivors split into two opposing groups, officers and passengers on one side, sailors and soldiers on the other side. Mind you, this isn't a big raft, okay? So you can imagine 150 people on a raft on two sides, 20 feet in between them. On the very first night of being adrift, 20 people were killed or committed suicide, including the first officer. During the storm, dozens of people died fighting for the safest place on the raft in the center. Others were washed overboard by waves. The provisions ran out quickly. On the fourth day, only 67 people remained alive. Many of them began to practice cannibalism. 4 days. Okay. On the eighth day, the 15 strongest survivors threw the weak and the wounded overboard, and after 13 days at sea, the raft was discovered with only 15 of the original 150 men still alive. This tragedy is so well known that Theodore Géricault in 1818 painted a picture of the Medusa tragedy, which currently hangs in the Louvre. Okay? Second story. This is the story of T-36. In December 1959, 6 self-propelled barges attached to the garrison at Itarup Island were beached in order to wait out a period of winter storms and perform planned repairs. Shortly before January 17, 1960, the command had been alerted of a final supply ship's late arrival, and 2 of the 6 barges were dragged back to the water. Both received 1.5 tons of diesel fuel and 3 days' supplies of water and food. Shortly after midnight on January 17, 1960, the barges were hit by a severe storm, accompanied with hurricane-force winds. The tackle was torn, and the 4-man crew, young men 18 to 20 years old, started the barge's engines in an attempt to stay away from the rocks. Weighing anchor away from shore proved impossible due to poor visibility and strong winds. When after 40 minutes the wind had pushed the barge too close to shore, the engines were started again in order to navigate further away from it. The sequence repeated a few more times. Fighting with this storm continued for over 10 hours. Okay. Eventually, the eye of the storm passed over the island and the wind reversed directions, this time pushing the barge away from shore. The crew decided to run the barge aground, but when they attempted to do so around 10 p.m., the engines ran out of fuel and stopped. The wind dragged the barge out of the lagoon and into the open ocean. There was not enough food on the barge. 1 loaf of bread, a bucket of potatoes, 15 to 16 spoonfuls of cereal, and 1 can of food that got scattered around by the storm and ended up sodden in diesel fuel. Okay. While their original water supply, a 2-gallon bucket worth tank, had been destroyed in the storm, a significant amount of water, 32 gallons worth, red with rust and tasting like metal, was available in the engine's cooling system. So this is what they're drinking. When the water in the cooling system was gone, the soldiers collected rainwater. The 4 men rationed what they had. They had no idea how long it would be until they were rescued, but eventually the food did run out. The crew eventually ate their leather belts, wristlets, leather parts of their garment, and leather boots in attempts to quell hunger. After burning random papers, rags, their wooden beds, the crew eventually resorted to using tires that served as the barge's fenders for fuel. Mind you, remember, this is December, okay, and January, at the middle of winter. Approximately 40 days into their journey, they spotted a passing ship, but attempts to attract its attention failed. In the following days, 2 more ships passed by without noticing them. The uncontrolled T-36 endured a 49-day-long drift until the U.S. aircraft carrier Kearsarge picked them up on the 7th of March in stormy waters 1,200 miles off of Wake Island. Okay. When the soldiers came on board the USS Kearsarge, the men were mere skeletons. They were quickly offered food, but rather than eating like rabid animals, stuffing their mouths as fast as they could, they politely and casually ate a meal, even passing plates to each other as though they were at a formal dinner party. All 4 men survived because they worked together as a team. So this is what I pose to you. Okay? Which boat would you rather be on? The one where everyone turns on each other, or the one where everyone works together? You see, you'll face this issue. You're already facing this issue. You just may not recognize it. This happens every day in normal life. Working together as a team is going to be your only means of survival. You cannot let your ego or someone else's ego get in the way. If you decide that it's your way or the highway, you're doomed to fail. This isn't only a lesson for shit hits the fan scenarios, but life in general. If you think that you're better than everyone else, or you're the only one that can lead a group in anything, shit hits the fan, a baseball team, a company, you may wind up like the first officer on the Medusa, the first one to die. After all, you were the one in charge, and everyone blindly followed your lead. You were the one responsible for putting them in the situation they now found themselves. You'll be the one to pay the price. Friendship and teamwork are essential in surviving any shit hits the fan situation. You have to have respect, and you have to show respect for others that are in the same situation you are, the ones struggling to accomplish the same things and to reach the same goals. Letting your ego get in the way or being closed-minded will certainly lead to yours and to others' demise. The point is, never ever follow someone blindly. You have no idea what their motives are. Leadership by ego will never serve anyone well. Not the leader, not the follower. Ask any military officer. They will tell you every time that the success of any mission was because of the troops' actions, not theirs. Pinball out.